The spell towers are one of the most annoying defenses to deal with inside of Clash of Clans and are something that most players hate. And when they first came out, the spell towers were incredibly broken and people were saying that they were ruining the game, but since then the spell towers have received many changes and have gone through multiple nerfs. So today we'll be going over the history of the spell towers and seeing how they became the most feared defense inside of Clash of Clans. But first, I just want to let you guys know that I did launch a new channel for Clash Royale and I have uploaded the first video onto that channel. So if it's something you're interested in, then make sure to check it out. The link will be in the description. Plus, I'm also doing a giveaway on my Twitter, which is also linked below. But back to the video now. The spell tower was introduced in October of 2022 with the Town Hall 15 update, and it was an extremely unique defense. It was the first of its kind in that it didn't actually shoot anything. All other defenses in the game have some sort of projectile that they shoot at the enemy troops, even the air sweeper, since I'd say the air acts as a projectile. But the spell towers are unique since they didn't shoot anything. Instead, they worked like a normal spell and had a radius around the tower itself where the spell would drop and deal its effects. Plus, it also could reload itself during the match, which is different from other defenses like the Inferno Tower or even the Monolith, since they can't reload during the battle if they end up running out of ammo. And apart from just it being different than the other defenses, it was also arguably one of the most confusing ones to figure out, since each different spell in the tower had their own kind of set of rules when it came to getting deployed and some of the mechanics behind it. Like the Poison Spell Tower is the only one that actually somewhat gets shot like a projectile, since the spell gets launched towards whatever it is targeting, whereas the other two spell towers drop the spells on themselves and their location will be the same at any time. But if the Poison Spell Tower ends up getting destroyed with the poison spell still active, it will launch it directly onto itself like the other spells. And with each spell having its own activation requirements and radiuses and a bunch of other things, it really made it hard for normal players to try and just learn everything right when the new Town Hall came out. And it really became a thing that only the pro players or just people with a ton of time could really fully learn and be able to apply effectively in battles, and therefore they were the ones that could really enjoy it, while the majority of players were just getting frustrated over the mechanics. And this greatly reduced the number of 3 stars that people were getting at Town Hall 15, since a lot of people really just couldn't figure out the spell towers and the monolith as well that also came with it. Because while normal players weren't that good on the offense, defense wise they could be right up there with the pro players, since all they had to do was just copy the base layout. The spell towers were so unique and different that people were literally making entire different base layouts for each of the spell towers and all the different combinations you could make with them. There were 3 spells, the Rage, Poison, and Invisibility, and that was also the order you unlock them in. Then there were 2 spell towers in total, so that meant by mixing and matching them you could end up with 6 total combinations, which all could be very different from each other in terms of their purpose and how they would affect the attack. But at the beginning, the strongest by far was the double poison combination. If you were at Town Hall 15 around the beginning or were just at least aware of what was going on, then you would know just how insanely broken and overpowered the double poison meta was. Literally everyone was using it, since you being able to just slow down the movement and attack speed of the enemy troops right in the core of the base was just so strong, and that was, in my opinion, the biggest reason why Town Hall 15 was considered so hard to play. If you wanted to try and counter this, then you had to be very precise with your timings for your troops and spells, and there literally was very little room for error, and that is why it was really a thing that only pro players could really figure out and have fun with, since most other players just didn't find it fun and it was very annoying for them. And because of this, about 2 months later, the Poison Spell Tower received a nerf so that the Poison Spell would only reduce the attack speed by 25% instead of 35%, but the movement reduction wouldn't be changed. And this may not sound like the biggest of nerfs, but it was a pretty big difference and did make the Poison Spell used a lot less. This is what let the Raid Spell Towers come into the limelight to replace the Poison, and you can kind of say that both of these spells just did the same thing. Since the poison spell slowed down the troops and made them less effective, which let the defenses in the core of the base do more damage over time, but the raid spell towers buffed the defenses themselves, and this buff made them do double damage for a whole 18 seconds, which was also really powerful, especially with defenses like the Expo since they just shot so fast anyways. So their DPS was just crazy. And so the nerf of the poison spell and the effectiveness of the raid spell really just created the double rage meta. And this was basically where people would put their raid spell tower next to some key defenses so that when the tower activated, some of the most important and powerful defenses would just do double the damage and be insanely hard to defend against. It was because of things like this that really showed how important timing was with things like the warden ability or just usage of your own rage or invis spells to try and counter it. And what made it even worse was that sometimes if you weren't quick enough, the rage and even poison towers could activate another one or maybe even 2 times, and if it got to that point then you were pretty much guaranteed to most likely not even get a 2-star depending on the base and some other factors. Then, I mean, over time people obviously started to understand the spell towers and develop strategies around them, but that still didn't change the fact of just how strong they were. And this led to another nerf of the spell towers in June of 2023. The raid spell got 2 nerfs, with the first being that it now boosted the damage by 90% instead of 100%, and the second nerf was that the reload time was increased by a whole 20 seconds, and the poison and invis spell's reload time was also raised by 10 seconds. This was quite a big difference, and while this was enough to rule out the double poison strategy, the double rage was still strong since it was like the only good one left. And I know there is the invis spell tower that I haven't really talked about, but that tower had really just been the trickiest one in my opinion to figure out and use effectively a majority of times. So that makes it hard to kind of build a base around, and it is really just more of like a special case spell that only some people use in specific cases, and it has never really been all that popular or super strong, so I don't really think it matters too much. Personally, I'd say the invis towers were just more annoying than actually strong. But if you fast forward to just the end of 2023 during the World Finals, you can actually see the stats of the usage of the spell towers, and the double rage combo is by far the most popular, with the next 2 just being a combo of the rage with invis and poison, with the double poison only being used 1 out of 100 times, and this really shows just how much better the rage spell tower was than the other ones. And from the release of the spell towers all the way up to this point, the whole time the spell towers were getting a ton of hate from the community because of how strong they were. I mean, if you looked on Reddit, there would be a ton of posts complaining about the spell towers and how they were just catering towards the pro players and how Supercell didn't care about the casual player base, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. But there definitely was a bit of truth to this, since the difference between attacking at Town Hall 14 and 15 was pretty big. I mean, Town Hall 15 was way harder, and it has been pretty controversial about whether or not that was good for the game, but personally I don't think it was, but I definitely understand the other argument. But about 2 months ago, Town Hall 16 came out, and this also brought some changes with the spell towers, mainly just a rage one because it got another nerf where its radius was reduced, where it could rage other defenses, meaning in most cases people weren't able to rage as many defenses as before, and this has made an impact. This has kind of brought the poison spells back, but there is still a healthy mix of the raid spells and even the invisibility spells being used. Right now, I'd say the game is at its most balanced state when it comes to the spell towers, since there isn't an overwhelming majority like there was in the past with the double poison and double rage metas. And through all of these various nerfs, the spell towers of all kinds are definitely not as OP or broken as they once were when they got released, and therefore are a lot more liked by the community now. But that still doesn't change the fact that they are still difficult to attack, and many people still fear the spell towers in super well built bases, especially in Clan Wars where the stakes are a lot higher. And overall, just the whole complexity and strength of the spell towers is really what made them arguably the most feared defense inside of Clash of Clans, and is the reason they have just continued to receive nerfs and have never gotten a buff. But that's it for this video. Make sure to check out my Clash Royale channel and the Twitter giveaway if you want a chance to win, and I'll see you guys in the next video.